All right, this is Nick Kringus. I am here with Rob Kosberg of Bestseller Publishing. Just a brief intro of Rob. Rob is a three-time best-selling author, and he's been featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine. His not his most recent book. His most recent book, I believe, is published Right with AI. Is that
Right
right,
with
Rob?
AI. Yep.
And then the one before that I read was is Publish, Promote, Profit, and the system that goes behind that has helped countless entrepreneurs become the go-to authority in their markets, and just to gain authority and help them kind of promote the book and become a best-selling author, and then use that book in a business purpose for marketing reasons, to promote their businesses and to grow their businesses. So it's really good to have you on, Rob.
Good to see you again, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you again. The first podcast that we did not record.
And that was so epic too.
I know. I thought it was great. We have the audio, so if you want to check that out. But I felt terrible, but Rob was gracious enough to say, hey, let's just re-record it. So
Absolutely. And we spent the first 10 minutes talking about golf anyway.
That's right, as usual, as
Right.
per usual. So, Rob, I originally met Rob at a Top One mastermind event that Todd Brown puts on. And Rob, I know you're a part of multiple groups, including Russell Brunson's group, and now the Top One. So just a little bit of background, maybe, about how you got to those groups, and then we'll get into your background.
Yeah, someone might say I'm a mastermind junkie. I'm a big believer in education and in shortening the time frame between learning something and actually experiencing success in something. And I learned that from my dad when I was in real estate. My dad sent me through various coaching programs, some pretty famous ones for people involved in real estate, Mike Ferry, Tom Ferry, those guys. I actually did the book for one of the books for one of the Ferry brothers on real estate, which was cool, mindset and stuff. That came years and years later. But so probably from my dad and the mentorship that he had when he was in real estate, and then, him mentoring me. And, when I got into the online world, I'm not the youngest dude, right, in that online space. In fact, oftentimes I'm one of the older guys in the room. And so, like, I'm always like digging in. I'm a huge believer in marketing because primarily in my earlier business career in real estate, and this is going all the way back many years. My whole business and mentality taught by my dad was, make cold calls, get out there and hustle, knock on doors, that kind of thing. And I did that for years and years and years, really, really successfully. And when I learned via Dan Kennedy more than 20 years ago now that there was another way, I was like, oh, I would like to know that other way, please.
Yeah.
And that went from direct mail, and I did radio and television advertising. And it went from all of that to the online space. And that's where I got introduced to like Russell Brunson and Todd Brown, of course, where we met, and many others that, have just helped me. I mean, my entire business is online marketing now. So it's using my books in conjunction with book funnels and paid advertising to attract clients into my business every single day. So it's a game changer.
Awesome. We have that in common, is that one of the first people I ever learned from in online marketing was Dan Kennedy, and he obviously not an online marketer, but I was running a restaurant at the time, and I picked up a book called Moonlighting on the Internet by Yannick Silver.
Oh yeah.
And he mentioned Dan Kennedy as kind of the guru, the godfather of direct response.
Yeah.
So I signed up for his newsletter, and it was from there he emailed me about a course that his SEO guy was putting out. And that's how I was originally introduced into the SEO world. And I learned SEO for the restaurant primarily.
Yeah.
Dan Kennedy was the source, was the first guy that I was really learning from in terms of marketing anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's the, I think, for our generation, and I'll expand that just a little. He's the OG, right? He's the original gangster of all of that stuff. And so and I also, some people don't like Dan, grumpy old Dan kind of thing, but I like the style. I like the straightforwardness of it. I love direct response. That after many 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 years of cold calling and hustling, to know that there's a better way and an easier way, man, I was all in.
Yeah, what drew me to his ideas was the idea of this big dumb company versus direct
Yeah.
response,
Yeah.
and spending millions on just brand building and putting your name out there
Yeah, have a
versus
Coke and a smile, right? They got
yeah,
billions of dollars to invest in polar bear cartoons. You and I
right.
don't have that.
No, when I was like, yeah, that's not me at all. So I loved his angle, which was
Yeah.
like track everything, make sure that everything you put out there returns you a certain amount of money back for each investment. So
Yep.
I was really into Dan. So when you now we can get into your story a little bit, but I read it in the book and feel we can totally go over it again. I don't think that's an issue, but you were in real estate, and then 2008 happens when it's just a mortgage and financial meltdown.
Yeah.
So like you said, you were really successful in that world, and then we'll take us back to like 2008. What was that like?
Oh, about as horrible as you can imagine. You know, I mean, I was in real estate on and off for a long, long time, since I was 18 years old. And by that time, I was in my early 40s. So, I was pretty established. I had multiple businesses. We did closings. So I owned a title company, closing real estate. I had a financial services kind of niche. I owned a mortgage company, and I owned a real estate company, and we coached and taught and spoke on real estate investing, and we had a ton of real estate investments. And I mean, it's hard to imagine even now. It's not that long ago. It was 15, 16 years ago, but it's hard to imagine. I mean, imagine the real estate that you own and that you either live in or that you own as investment drops like in 6 months by 60%. Like that's what happened. The single family home I lived in was about at that time, conservatively $2.25 million property, equestrian trail, paddock, barn in the back, acre, 8,000 square foot, magnificent 4-car garage. And that house went from 2.25 million to like 850,000. And I mean, I put down like real money, like $350,000 of real money to buy that house, and it was gone. It was gone. And the same with all the other real estate that I owned. I mean, I had tons of equity in my real estate until I didn't. And add to the fact that real estate wasn't moving. I mean, if I could have held my real estate for 5 years or 10 years, certainly if I could have held it until now, it's all gone way back up, and it's significantly higher than even its highs way back then. But my business income was all around real estate, and that market had completely died, shut down. The only homes that were selling were homes that were government, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or FHA, VA, and we didn't do any of that. We didn't do the lower income stuff. So, I mean, for anybody who heard the first recording, I don't want to begrudge that point, but it was terrible. It was a nightmare. It was a complete nightmare. I mean, I was pulling art off my walls, original artwork, just to sell it for pennies on the dollar. That's not the time to sell, by the way. That's the time to buy. And, I'm like, oh, the stuff that I sold, my Rolexes, stuff that thank God it still had value because, even though it was 25 cents on the dollar, I needed that money. And it, helped me to pay my electric bill and to, keep the lights on and keep me in a home. So it was a terribly difficult time. Um, and fortunately I did have mentors and I'm a spiritual person. I have been for a long time. And so my personal faith in God, really got me through that, but it was the worst time of my life. Now, looking back at it, fantastic, right?
It's
Really,
funny.
honest to
Funny
goodness.
how that happens.
Looking back, there are two things I look back on. Number one, wasn't that bad. Like I lived in my house the whole time. It was more the worry and the anxiety and the fear. And I had property foreclosed on, and like the worst possible thing that could have happened did, from the standpoint of finances. But I was healthy. My kids are healthy. My wife is healthy. Like our marriage is strong. All of that. And looking back on it, what a lesson I learned, and what amazing growth I experienced as a man, as a leader. Just so looking back on it, I see it as a great blessing. At the time, it was so painful. Worst time of my life.
Wow. And then at the time you had kids, a wife, like you said, you had 3 kids at the time.
3 kids in private school. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My
I mean,
goodness.
that was awful. Yeah, and look, I mean, I found my way out of it. And I found my way to something amazing that has led to, you know, uh 25, 30 million dollars, in revenue, thousands of people that I've helped with their books, all because I got advice to write a book, from my financial services company. The real estate companies, all that had to be shut down. I mean, I pulled hundreds of thousands of dollars out of my pocket, drained my savings, thinking that real estate's going to turn around, it's going to turn around, it's going to turn around. And it took years for it to turn around. Um, I mean, it didn't really start turning the corner probably till 2013, looking back. But other markets were people were still like, for a lot of people, the recession ended. If you were in real estate, the recession went on for a really long time. But in financial services, it ended. And so fortunately, I had that business. I had, this book, this ugly little book that I wrote, on the advice of Dan Kennedy, that was a game changer. It exploded my business and led me into an entirely different business, which, again, so grateful for.
So it's interesting. You said that you were doing all that you could to keep that business alive, and for as long as you could. So at the time in this great turmoil and just struggle and pressure, you were trying to grasp and keep this business going, which I can certainly relate to. So looking back, would it have been different maybe if you had way more money, or to keep these things afloat? How would that have been different? You don't think it would have been different?
I would have lost more. Yeah, I would have lost more money. The if I had the knowledge that I have today back then, I would have shut it down much faster. The mistake that I made was just pouring all of my personal wealth to keep the business open, when I should have just cut it to the bone, and maybe even just shut it down entirely. When COVID hit and the world shut down, right, in March of 2020, we moved from California, which was where my office was, to our home in St. Augustine. And when the world shut down, I was like, okay, I've been waiting for the shoe to drop. The second, that old term, the second shoe to drop. I've been waiting for it. And I we had a war, nice war chest, and the business was going great, but the whole world shut down, right? Like everything shut down. Of course, restaurants and in-person type businesses, they were ground zero of COVID. Gyms, restaurants, that was like the real estate market in 2008. And but we didn't know what we didn't know. So when 2020 COVID hit, um, week one, when everything shut down, we're flush with cash. Business is doing great, but I pulled the entire staff together, and I said, okay, our office was shut down in California. So I got to pay this big, $10,000 a month office expense, but we can't even go to it. So we all met on Zoom, and I said, look, here's the deal. I said, I right now we don't know what's going to happen in the world, and so we have two options. I said, option number one is the entire team goes halftime. We cut you from 40 hours a week to 20 hours a week immediately, or we have to lay off a significant number, and I'm going to let you guys decide which route we're going to go. And everybody was in favor of immediately going to 50%. Business hadn't, it's not like anything terrible happened, but I was ready, like, for the shoe to drop. That's what I should have done way back in 2007 when the signs started coming. Now, they were only on halftime for 3 weeks, and we ended up doing $500,000. We had a killer month in April. We had a big challenge. The challenge alone did $500,000 plus our normal business. I don't know, might have been 700,000. We had a killer month. And so immediately I put everybody back on. I'm like, okay, we're online. We're an online business now. And this COVID thing doesn't look like it's going to hurt us. But that was the right decision to make. And I like the way I did it. I think we did it. I think I learned from my mistakes 15 years ago, 16 years ago.
That's just awesome that you I had a very, very similar experience in COVID, although I'm in my 40s now, and I didn't have that first experience. So it was my first experience. And I think, like you said, I think we held on to things for too long. My brother was running the restaurant. I had sold the restaurant to him in about 2018. So although I wasn't in the restaurant, I was getting an income. We were holding the note for my brother, and I had retired my parents. They went to Greece, so they were very much reliant on that money. And if just like you said, if I acted a little bit more quickly, and I was on top of the situation with my brother, he would be in a better. I mean, he eventually closed the restaurant, but not until about a year and a half ago. So he kind of struggled through it, and he amassed all this debt. He wasn't paying us. So we did all we could, but it was already too late. Like if we had, nipped it in the bud or got together really early on in COVID, I think it would have went a lot differently. So very similar situation that I wish I would have acted a little bit faster or sooner.
I don't know if you can learn that lesson without learning that lesson. I mean, maybe if you're humble enough to listen to somebody and you have somebody around you that really experienced that, maybe then you can save it. But like, I don't know. I mean, my dad and I were in business together, and my dad had been in business for 40 years, and he didn't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he experienced recessions and that kind of thing, but nothing like what 2008 was. And and so, and you've never experienced anything like 2020 or your brother. And so, I mean, we don't worry about it, right? It is what it is, and it was a lesson that we learned. But when it happens again, and something is going to happen, it always does. When it happens again, the experience will prepare you to handle things differently.
Yeah, it just seems like you have better contingency plans because you know more things that could go wrong and how to handle those things. But I mean, we went off on a little tangent, but back to which is fine. I like it. I mean, I'm interested in it. That's why we went into it. But when you going back to when 2008, and you said that your mentors recommended or advised you to write a book. Tell me about that. Like, what was the thinking there? What were you asking them? What were you trying to do in the next version of your life?
Yeah, I was known for real estate, um, because I spoke on real estate. We advertised. We spent a lot of money in advertising. We were Dan Kennedy disciples, even while in real estate. So we did radio advertising. We did newspaper advertising. And so now I'm going to get into financial services. I've closed my real estate, and no one really knows me for that. So I just asked. I said, "Look, what would you do? I mean, we're coming out of this terrible recession. We got absolutely hammered. We made a lot of mistakes. We lost, everything, almost everything, more than everything, depending on how you look at your debt." And Dan said, "Look, there's nothing better than a book to get known, and attract great clients." And of course, Dan has lived that model for many, many, many years, and it just rang true to me. So I wrote, Life After Debt, which was, kind of my financial services book. It's not a direct investing book, but we did all different kinds of financial services, everything from short sales and foreclosure defense, which at that time was big, to life insurance and investments and that sort of thing. And this book basically, made a name for me. Got me on the radio, got me a lot of free publicity, speaking engagements, that kind of thing. And almost from day one, I started getting clients from it. And then we started using it in a paid fashion. We ran paid ads, offering the book for free. That was our book funnel. We'll ship you the book for free. We actually shipped them the book for free. We even paid for shipping. We mailed it out. We did it all in the office, right? We had hundreds of books that were going out every week. And of course we needed, name, address, telephone number, email address, all of that stuff. So, we just followed up with those people. Did you get the book? Great. You didn't have a chance to read it. I understand. Well, look, I'm on the phone now. Tell me about your problems. Tell me about your situation. What are you trying to solve? And people just became clients. And I mean, we went from zero in this business to $1 million in just over a year, 13 months, and then multi-millions in the next year. And this was 2009, 2010, 2011, when it's still pretty bad out there. I mean, stock market was still way down, real estate was way down, and we were exploding. So people, started hearing my ads. We were now spending, $20,000 a month just on radio ads, and kind of owned the airwaves now from nothing. Like, this is going from zero to 20 grand a month, which at that time was a lot of money, or it seemed like it, for radio advertising. And so people just started asking, "How are you doing it? And I love your book, and can you help me with it?" And one thing led to another, and that led to me helping people for free at first, and then I saw that there was actually a business there, and so started helping people to do their books and avoid the mistakes that I made with mine over the first few years, kind of shortcut the process. And that morphed into ghostwriting and book launches and PR and media and building book funnels, and you name it, the whole thing now. And I sold my financial services company and went all in about a dozen years ago.
Fantastic story, Rob.
Crazy, right?
Yes, crazy is right. So just to kind of recap, first of all, what a testament that Dan Kennedy, who we initially called the OG of direct response and of marketing, says, what you should do is write a book. There's nothing better than writing a book to getting yourself out there and promoting a business, even if it's from scratch or if it's established. And then take that and fast forward, and from what I'm gathering, you got yourself out of a hole in within a year's time, back on your feet with a
Yep.
new company that was prospering and successful and bringing in money, and you were helping a lot of people in the financial world.
Yeah, it was when we were going through the most difficult time. I mean, like literally wondering how I'm going to pay my electric bill. I mean, I hadn't thought about that maybe ever in my life. I mean, even as a teenager, I was a hustler and working hard and always had the nicest car of all my buddies, and and this is like working as a bellman or working for hotels and stuff. And so, you know, when we were going through that period of time, it seemed like forever. But looking back, it was about 18 months of like real pain. And then, the new business exploded, took off. We had a lot of cleaning up to do over a number of years, and we're able to do all of that, which was really cool. And that business, the financial services company, as I said, was a great start and sold. And then Bestseller Publishing, is a company that's done, approaching $30 million in revenue and thousands of clients and dozens of employees and writers and, just really fun stuff. Great people. I actually, I don't think you know this. I didn't just arrange this until like 2 weeks ago, but I'm actually doing a joint venture with Dan Kennedy, which is the first time ever. I've done
Wow.
various stuff with him, but we're actually doing a JV together where I'm going to market to my folks his stuff. He's going to market his folks my stuff, and we're going to do a 3-day challenge together. And which I'm really excited about. That's kind of talk about full circle. Pretty cool.
That is just outstanding.
Yeah.
Congrats, Rob.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm really excited about that. That's in some ways a dream that wasn't even a dream come true.
Yeah, it's almost like you have arrived where you're, now working with your mentor that told you to write a book, and that we've been studying
Where it all
forever.
started,
Where it all started.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Man, you threw me off track with that one. That was a big one. Awesome. So when you so now, like you said, you started the financial services company, you grew that, you eventually sold it because people were asking you, like, how did you do this? And then people started asking you to, help with their books and the same process that you went through. But if we can go back to the book, Life After Debt, a little bit and talk about in 3 parts, like what you talk about now is publish, promote, profit. That's your
Right.
system for writing and getting a book out there. But in terms of that framework, how did that go in terms of you writing that initial book? Could you talk a little bit about that? Maybe like, what you would have done better, mistakes you made, what went well, what didn't go so well?
Yeah. There's a lot. So, I never thought of myself as a writer. And so my immediate assumption was, okay, there are 2 paths. I can write it myself, which I don't want to do, or I could hire a ghostwriter. And I didn't know anything. All I knew was I needed to look for a ghostwriter, maybe interview some people, and then have somebody help me to write it. I didn't know what a good process was or a bad process or any of that stuff. I did have some marketing chops because of the Dan Kennedy, world. So I hired a ghostwriter, and that was a terrible experience. First of all, it was a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of money at that time, but I knew I needed to get this done fast. And so speed was more important than the money, even at that time. And, the mistake that ghostwriter made actually led to our entire ghostwriting program. So again, it was a good mistake, but it cost me a year of this process. The short version of the mistake is actually a very common mistake in ghostwriting, but again, I didn't know that at the time. I've had many, many people, hundreds of people tell me that the same thing happened with them. And that's basically that with traditional ghostwriting, it's generally you jump on a call like this. Of course, in those days, it wasn't a video call. It was just, a phone call. And they ask you questions and you answer the questions. And so you show up relatively unprepared, which is easy for you as the author, but it doesn't produce anything good. And so I did that over a period of probably 4 or 5 months. She asked me questions like you're doing, and I have answers. I'm good at talking. I like to talk, right? And so she listened, she recorded, and then she wrote like I still remember it was 186 pages, and it was it was awful. It was super generic, like it could have been written by anybody about anything. It was like one of those what are those things called that are like shared generic books, generic
Yeah.
trainings. I don't remember what it is, but
No, I get it. So
and I hated it, right? But that's common. I didn't know that at the time, but that's really common, is that if a ghostwriter doesn't have a really powerful process, we now call it enhanced ghostwriting, and that's our trademark process, then what you end up getting is content, but no real context, no story, no emotion, no connection, no dramatic points and conclusions and epiphanies. And so I read it. I knew I immediately hated it. I was like, I'm not going to waste any more time with this person. They're already paid. Thank you. You go on your way. And I just rewrote it. I just started writing it myself. It probably took a year. I wasted maybe 6 or 8 months with her. It took another year before I finally got it done. And then I got it done and I got it published, and I went all out on it, but that was a big mistake.
So you had invested a large sum of money at that time, which you
Yeah.
didn't have,
No.
to hire a ghostwriter because you thought it was the fastest way to get it done.
Fastest and best way, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's hire a professional.
And then it turns out that it's not the fastest way by far.
Yeah.
Looking back, it probably cost you a good amount of time and way more than what it cost for the ghostwriter.
100%. If I tell people it was my $1 million mistake, because it ended up adding more than a year onto the process. And from the day I published my book and started using it, I made $1 million in 13 months. So, just if I could have saved 13 months, I could have made another $1 million, certainly. And maybe more than that. So I call it my $1 million mistake. And I've always believed that time is more valuable than money. It wasn't the fact that it's a 5-figure check that I lost. It was the more than year that I lost between the failed working with her and the additional 12 or 13 months it took me to write the book. That was the biggest pain point. That's where the real loss is. Most people don't understand that, I don't think, because they're always worried about the money, and they don't realize that it's the money that you could have made in that period of time that's far more valuable than the money that you could pay somebody to help you do it right and expedite the process. So I picked which is very common. I picked the wrong ghostwriter, didn't know what I didn't know. I thought it was kind of all the same, and it's just not.
Yeah, I think that's very common, is that people are, counting the money that's going out as the only cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's so many other costs, costs for other alternatives, like how, if it's the fastest way, how much is it going to cost me if it goes wrong? Like you went through. So I think what you said is just so important, is that to look at all angles and all costs of this project.
My income more than 10x'd from the year before I wrote the book to the year after I wrote the book. More than 10x. I was still making some money, hustling real estate, doing some various things. I made 90 or so thousand, which I know it's, to a lot of people, that's a really good income and all that. But, it wasn't enough for me to pay my bills, with all the bills that I had from, my companies and all of that stuff. And the next year I did, over $1 million. So it's not the cost of, the $20,000 or whatever, or like use a Russell Brunson's mastermind. $50,000 is his lowest ticket. Inner Circle Mastermind, 50K, or Todd Brown's. If you don't know how to make $1 million and you're making 100,000 a year, then not knowing how to make $1 million is costing you $900,000 a year to not know that. Okay. So if you can pay somebody 50,000 to learn how to actually do what they're doing, which is 10 times better than you, then pay the 50 grand, pay the money, because it's costing you $900,000 not to know how to do it. That's honestly the way I look at it. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you don't look at it that way, you may be kind of stuck in a bad mentality.
Super interesting and relevant to me because I'm considering joining a few groups, but I'm talking to Stacy about these different investments that I want to make in myself and learning and meeting new people. And but we have our first daughter going to college in 2 years, so she's thinking about is we can't put this out because then it's going to take away from from sending our daughter to the school that she wants to go to. And it's been it's been hard to kind of justify, but it's the same thing that you're saying. Like, it's not the money that's going out and taking away. It's all the money that we're not making because we don't have this knowledge. So it's just super powerful.
Yeah.
So when you've published the first book, I can imagine, did you have a kind of a thought of like what type of services you're going to provide?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We already had a company, fledgling, but we had a company, and we were open-minded as well. Meaning that we wanted to see what, the book is generic, right? Life after debt, practical solutions to get out of debt, build wealth, etc. So it was generic enough, which I probably wouldn't do today, but it was generic enough for us to pivot. And so that is what we did, and did very successfully. So we had a fledgling company at that time, and then the book helped it to explode.
Awesome. So then after the book is published, you said that now if we could move on to the promote side of things. I know that you've got time on the radio, but what was that process? And I also know that you did a lot of it on your own. So what about that process? Would you have kind of improved, or did you make, what mistakes did you make early on? Tell us a little bit about that part.
Two big mistakes I made. Number one is I actually went publish profit. I actually skipped the whole promotion part of my book, because again, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I needed to start trying to see if this book would actually help make me money right away. So I skipped the whole promotion part of the book. Now, I'm not saying I didn't promote the book. I'm saying that I skipped the promotion part. Is really about creating a book that attracts, people organically on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. And because of its reviews and because of the marketing that you do for it, it actually becomes a real bestseller and makes a big splash in the marketplace. Like Publish, Promote, Profit's a Wall Street Journal bestseller, a USA Today bestseller, #1 book on Barnes and Noble, #1 book on Amazon. I mean, it made a significant splash for me, which got me all kinds of media attention and opportunities. I didn't do any of that with Life After Debt. I didn't know. So I made the mistake of kind of missing that whole thing. Now I circled back around to it later, but I made that mistake. What I did was I started using the book immediately to attract opportunities. And the first thing I did, and this is more the profit phase than it is the promote phase. Even though you're promoting the book, it's more about the book promoting you and your service, or you and whatever it is that you do. And so I used the book to get on media. I got free media opportunities. Would have been a lot easier if the book was a bestseller and made a big splash. It did not. It was just a book. But again, I didn't know what I didn't know at that time. And so the first big opportunity was radio. I got free radio opportunities as PR, and I just hustled. I mean, I just cold called radio stations. Hey, I'm an author, wrote this book. You have people that are struggling. Yeah, I mean, I had no pitch. I'm just hustling, right? And then it also got me speaking opportunities. It got me opportunities to talk in front of local groups about, the need to control your financial future. And all that was free. And that started bringing in money immediately. I mean, day one. That's part of the amazing luck and blessing of the story is like I got a client the first day that I was on the radio. And thank God that it did. I mean, it's so cool. And so that it just took off from there. It was like, oh my gosh, we got something. We're on to something.
Yeah.
And it just exploded.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's also brings to mind how people perceive you when you have a book.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit on the last call. But again, when I published my book and I made a ton of mistakes with it, SEO for law firms, it's not as successful as it could have been because I just wrote a book. I heard that that's a good thing to do. So I wrote my own book, put it out there. I was able to get a bunch of reviews and we actually did get clients from it. But yeah, it wasn't as successful as it could have been just because from every phase of the process of publish, promote, profit, I think that it could have been just so much stronger if I knew, like you said, I don't know what I don't know at the time, but I think it could have been just way stronger. But the perception that people have of you when you publish a book is pretty miraculous. I mean, I remember 3 days after I published the book, it was a weekend and I was at my brother-in-law's house for a family dinner. And my sister-in-law had a copy of the book and she wanted me to sign it. And I thought she was kidding. And she was like, no, I want you to sign this. Like, I want to be the first. I got the first copy, as soon as it came out, I was the first one to buy it. And I confirmed that for her and she had a marker and she wanted me to sign it. So even your own family, golf buddies were, like, oh my God, you wrote a book. Could not believe that I wrote a book. It was just like they saw me in a different light all of a sudden, which, I thought, I kind of was taken aback and thought, it's not a big deal. I sat down for 2 months.
It works better than you can ever imagine.
Right. I'm sure you've seen it over and over again.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just like you said, I mean, it's almost like, no, that's impossible, but it's like, it's a game changer. Nothing changes the frame that you're seen in like having your own book. Even when you make mistakes, even the mistakes that I made with mine, you're better to do it and make all the mistakes than try to do it perfectly. Unless you work with a company like mine, then you can do it perfectly. But you're better off just doing it than not doing it, for sure.
Well, that brings up another point, is that a bunch of people want to make it perfect. So they've been writing a book for years, and this thing's never going to come out. I'm sure you've come across that, right?
Yeah, that is probably the biggest challenge that we face is, people will hire us, they'll pay us a large sum. And then not always trust, right? They're afraid, it's not good enough, or I don't know, or, or they just procrastinate. They sit on it for months. And so we have to just remind them, look, it's okay. Number one, it's probably not the only book you're ever going to write in your life. Number two, if you think that it is, then you're probably never going to publish it, because you're always going to think that there's something missing from it. So look, when you have as many expert eyes on it as our company puts on it, I just hope our clients trust, and eventually they do. But it is a big, big challenge that people have, is dealing with that perfectionism.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm, glad to find out that after I published it with Kindle Direct Publishing, it's very easy to go back and just update the
Make
manuscript
changes.
and the
Yep.
same exact ISBN number.
Yep.
All the reviews stay there as long as you don't change the title, is from what I understand. So
Yep.
you can go back and make changes. It's not the end of the world, and it's not set in stone. It's not like you're doing it at a tablet.
Not at all.
Awesome. It's good to know. And then, just something that I thought about was that Dan, if you look at Dan Kennedy, he's written probably dozens and dozens of books. I mean, it's probably
Yep.
his number one strategy for getting new clients are his books.
Yep.
And then same thing with Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach.
Yep.
He puts out, they're like mini books, but his goal is to write 100 of these little books in 25 years. So
Yeah.
that's one a quarter. Now he has
Yeah.
this process of just pumping out book after book. And some of them are not great, to be honest. Some of them are a little bit redundant. They say the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
And they're small. They're not very impressive.
Yeah.
But it's grown Strategic Coach now into a, probably a $40 million a year business, something like that.
I have a bunch of them on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
And I joke about them. I'm like, who, not how. Like, I didn't need to read the book. The title is everything. But it's okay. Like I love his books and his writing. He has, profound nuggets in his writing. And so, but look, I mean, that's a lot of content. 100 books, one a quarter. I want to put out one or two a year. Excuse me, one in 1 or 2 years. So one every year or two. And if I can do that, which I have not done, but if I can do that going forward, I'm going to be thrilled. And you can put out pretty good content if you think in terms of stretching it out over a couple of year period.
Right. And then something that Dan Kennedy just recently wrote in his newsletter is that, writers write. Like, if you're going to be a writer and do it on your own, it's just all about, like, getting an hour a day in and just making sure that you write and get better and better at it.
He's right.
Was his advice.
Yeah.
So now, Rob, let's talk about in the last kind of segment of our call and time together, when somebody's working with you, like, what the process looks like. And again, it's a little bit redundant of the last call, but that one didn't have video, so you're getting to see our faces. And perhaps, put in, like, real example of people that have worked with you. Maybe that will be a little bit more, just paint a better picture of each step of the process.
I'll give kind of a generic overview first, and then I'll give a couple of examples that might be helpful as well. So, the average person will come to us with an idea and, with an expertise. So if we're talking about, estate planning attorneys or, an attorney of any kind, they have within their practice their best clients. And that's ideally who we want to write a book for. We want them to get more of their best clients. And so sometimes that means really niching down. So we take the first, several weeks and brainstorm kind of with our marketing team, who the avatar is, what their pain points are, what their difficulties are, to come up with a great hook, a narrow niche, a narrow avatar, a great title, subtitle, table of contents, etc. And only until that's done do we move on to building out what we call our enhanced ghostwriting program, which the short version of that is it's a way to meet with a ghostwriter and not experience all the failure and challenge that the average ghostwriter has. For us, that is by the writer being trained on our process and the client following our process. The short version of the process is every chapter needs a great story, case study, example. There needs to be dramatic points, highs, lows, epiphanies, etc. Then there's content. There's open loops, closed loops. There's content, and then there's conclusion and next steps. And so when someone follows the process, we get the right story, which could be their life story, could be a client case study, could be something from history or sports. We get the right story told in the right way and in the right segmentation, and then the right teaching. Then even though someone may be stuttering through it or, speaking in long run-on sentences, the writer still has like the context and the body. And so the writer can take that transcript, that recording, and make that into a really powerful, compelling chapter. So we do that for, we do it once. We like to meet once a week with a client. We do that over however many weeks necessary. Then we put a whole new set of eyes on it for editing. We put a whole new set of eyes on it after that for 2 rounds of proofreading. Then we do all the design, all the tech, all the formatting, and the publishing, which generally takes 6 months. If someone will meet with us once a week to get done, could be faster, but that's kind of average.
Got it. So are there people that want to get it done faster that will meet more often, or you don't?
Yes.
Or okay, got it.
There are 2 kinds of people. There are the people that say they want to get it done faster, and then they do that for 2 weeks, and then they fall back into, more difficulties outside. And then there's people that just, we just tell people, look, we're happy to go as fast as you want, but let's just be consistent. Let's set the same time every week, same day, and let's just get into a flow. And when we do that, we can really work fast, right?
Mm-hmm. Got it. So you can go as fast as someone will
100%
go or wants to go, but it should be consistent.
Yes, that's the most important part.
Awesome. So now, just any examples you can give about people that have really knocked this out of the park in terms of the whole process.
Yeah.
I'll open the floor to you.
Yeah, the other 2 big pieces are obviously the promotion of the book, which we do a lot of done for you promotion. So we do for our clients paid advertising. We do 3 US based press releases to 1,000 media outlets. We do a big social media campaign. Then we help them with whatever their profit formula is. We have, a dozen different formulas that we follow, whether it's speaking engagements or getting them actual media placements like TV, radio, podcast, etc. So, I mean, there's a bunch. The most recent one is a client that came to mind because I used her as an example on my last workshop. She's an estate planning attorney. She calls herself the Law Mother, which is kind of cool. And we did her book, launched it, became super successful. And then we started getting her on TV, PR, media. She actually did a workshop with me. She said, hey, I have a bunch of my friends that are attorneys. Could we do something together so that, we can show them how they can do this? I'm like, you are the sweetest thing. I mean, like she wants to help her attorney friends to like use a book and stuff, which was really cool. And, in the first 60 days, she had kind of a 3-step plan that we helped her with. Besides the stuff we do, like we got her media placements and speaking and that kind of thing. But her 3-step plan was to use the book to generate referrals within the business. That's always the first thing we recommend. She did that and sent like a invitation out to her email list of her clients and those that were potential clients. And she got 5 new clients within 30 days just from people that requested the book. That was $30,000 in revenue upfront that she did just from basically a short little email campaign that we helped her with. Then number two was strategic relationships, which we recommend. So she set up right out of the gate in month number one. Her plan was for a dozen, but she set up 3 or 4 right out of the gate with accountants and financial advisors, and she basically gave her book to them. She gave them like 10 copies each, which cost $40 to print. And she said, anybody that becomes a client of yours, it's kind of a natural, right? And she had relationships with these people before, but now they have a direct way to refer her. And within the first 60 days, she made another $30,000 just from referrals from people. Just, hey, you built out a nice financial plan with your financial advisor, and here, if you're thinking about a trust for your kids or whatever, read Pamela's book. Pamela Moss Garrett is her name, and read her book, and she got did another 30 grand from that. And then just recently, she was booked on the Drew Barrymore show, national TV, and which was cool. So we booked her on a lot of different media appearances and whatnot. And so, she's got a picture with Drew Barrymore, holding her book up, and she did like a 20-minute segment on the Drew Barrymore show with Drew, national TV. So her book, shot back up to number one, and she's done multiple 6 figures now in the first 6 to 8 months, just directly from the book, which is cool.
Wow. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
What's the book called, Rob?
It is, oh my gosh. If you look it up, it's by Pamela Moss Garrett. It's got like a little castle on it. It's very cool. Let me look it up. Ask me another question.
Right now.
Yeah.
No.
Come on, Rob. You should know. Lawmother.com is Pam, Pamela Moss. And so Legally Ever After. Legally Ever After.
I like that title a lot.
Yeah, and it looks like our designers created it, and it looks like the Disney castle, and I mean, not a trademark violation, but it's a beautiful castle. It's kind of the fairy tale thing. Yeah, it's very cool.
That's an awesome title. So, how important is that title, by the way?
Super, super important. Title should be 3 words. 1 to 3 words, could be 1 word. I like 1 or 3. And then the subtitle can be your more benefit rich descriptive of the promises. But title and cover, super, super important. And her title and cover are just beautiful.
So the title, is it, like yours, Life After Debt? Is it painting a picture of like a dream outcome for the ideal client that you're trying to attract?
Ideally, you want it to be a positive slant. Yes. Sometimes it can be a negative slant or neutral, but ideally a positive slant. Or it can just be something that if you can find, one great word that provokes curiosity and gets people to take the next step, think of Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, right?
Mm-hmm.
One word that is very provocative, interesting. What's this about? I think I know. So if you can find one word like that, that's really, really cool. Otherwise 3 words. Mine. It's not like publish, promote, profit. Is that sexy, right? But it spells it out pretty clear what it's about. Right with AI. I mean, I'm in the kind of business that it's more pragmatic than it is dreamy, because I'm not dealing with fictional authors. I'm dealing with nonfiction primarily.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah.
All right, Rob. I mean, that's all the questions I had. This has been fantastic talking to you. I think even better than the first time.
Yeah, fun. I mean, we go a long time, don't we?
Yeah. I looked at the time and it was, we're
like,
going.
Oh my gosh, who's going to listen to this?
Maybe nobody. Maybe it's just for us. All right, Rob. So this has been Rob Kosberg. It's been great talking to you
Same,
about
buddy.
the process of writing a book, and I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this, and especially avoid the mistakes that you and I have made along the way.
please write your book. I mean, it's a game changer. It's a game changer for your business. I mean, there's nothing better you can do with or without our help. There's nothing better you can do for your business than that.
Absolutely love it. Thanks, Rob.
All right, buddy. Thank you.